You guys ever wondered how you must be understood in life? You have to understand that it's really about changing your perception. You have to understand it's really about doing something different that you've never done before. You have to understand that each and every single time you show up for a video to do content for an audience or for whoever, you have to understand it's really about you. You have to understand it's about something greater than you. You have to understand it's something that's going to drive you and that you're passionate about. And what is that? You have to ask yourself those questions. You have to ask yourself, what are you passionate about? And you have to put it into content. And you have to do some videos today so that you can give that content and become somebody in that field. I mean, there are millions and millions and billions of ways to succeed today. And you have to understand that there's 7.6 billion people in the planet in 2020. So that means there is 7.6 billion ways to succeed today. You'll understand that. Although, guess what? I promise you that the more people and population and humanity grow, I promise you there are more ways to succeed than ever before. I promise you all that you have to go and find it. You have to go and find those ways. I promise you one way I succeed is I delay gratification in terms of food and drink and pornography and masturbation. I delay it as much as I can. I promise you that is called leadership. I promise you, you may be laughing because I said pornography and masturbation, and you are so mature for that. You're so mature for laughing at that. You have to understand you never laugh at anything. You only laugh with. You have to understand the whole point of this life is to give some content and let's help some people. You have to understand that many people have a pornography addiction. I promise you many people have a masturbation addiction, such as guys. And women too. You have to understand that you need to go and be more appropriate today. You have to understand that when you're more appropriate, you're going to be something much more fascinating. You're going to be something much more bearable in a way that you're fluctuating in a better way. You have to use every single word in the dictionary to understand what you're doing every single day. I promise you, I woke up today and everything clicked in a better way. I promise you, I got 4 links done into my link tree inside Instagram, and I managed to find my way throughout social media. And I mean, I have the way. I promise you that now all I can really do with social media is add another link into my Instagram, and that's it. I promise you that everything else is sorted out, and I just continue. You have to understand that some of my skills is I give money for social media so that people can come and see me. I promise you that's blessed when you're giving money so that people can see you. And always do it. I promise you it doesn't matter whether you give $10,000 and 7 people show up at your seminar. You are more blessed for doing so. I promise you that it comes back around in other ways. You'll find an example with Tony Robbins. I promise you he gave $10,000 for a seminar and 7 people showed up to his seminar. And he gave all the money. I promise you, he invested $10,000 into his seminar and 7 people showed up. I promise you now, Tony Robbins has $500 million in his account. I mean, it comes back in other ways. You have to understand that is so inspiring. I promise you now, what is inspiring about Tony Robbins is his will and focus and drive. I promise you, it's really that he's doing a lot of Jesus work today. And the thing that's letting him down is he has to charge people to make a living. I promise you, if that was Jesus, I promise you, Jesus would never charge you for anything. I promise you, that's the difference. I promise you now, if you are willing to succeed today, you have to do some free work for the rest of your life. And you have to do your passion for the rest of your life for free. I promise you now, what is more than money is the attention you grab from other people. So when you help 1 billion people, you have 1 billion friends. And you have 1 billion followers. And now, since this amount of people is following you all the time, I mean, when you go to Spain, I promise you 50,000 of them will come and see you because you're so popular. I promise you that's all the money in the world. I promise you when you get out of your limo in Sydney, I promise you there are 200 people waiting for you with signs saying, I love you, Danny, or I love you and what's your name. I promise you now, you have to understand that I'm speaking for everybody in a better way. Although you have to understand that people will put a sign saying, I love you, because you helped them. I promise you, I look at Justin Bieber, for example, who is an awesome singer, and I promise you the guy can sing. I promise you, although he's doing worse in his state today. I promise you, he's too much drugs today. I promise you, although that he's an amazing voice. I promise you, I love his song, Justin Bieber, You Too, and Intertwine, or something like that. Although I love the song, I promise you that the case is that his song is You Too, with David Guetta. And you have to go and check it out. Although you understand that he is so popular today in 2020 because of his voice and because of the singer he is. And now, when he gets out of the airport, I promise you all these women are saying, I promise you they're screaming. You have to understand, they're screaming for him and they love him so much. I promise you they love him because of something he has done for them in their life. Although you have to understand, it's the whole point to do so. I promise you the point is, let's do it differently. I mean, let's change approach and change approach and change approach and change approach and change approach. You have to understand, it's about Tony Robbins and what he says. You have to change approach. 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 I promise you, if you cannot quit smoking and doing drugs, I promise you have to change approach. 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 Because guess what? You haven't changed approach. I promise you, if you're doing the same thing over and over, you have not changed approach. I promise you, if you're doing something new, you have to change approach again. I mean, life has no bounds when you're changing approach and when you're doing something new. I promise you now, for example, Jesus. You have to understand, Jesus gave you life. I promise you, without Jesus, you will not have this life. And why do I say that? Because Jesus is the ultimate everything in life. And without Jesus, you have nothing. You have to understand that where I'm getting at is you have a choice. And God gave you choice. I promise you, you have a choice. Although Jesus created two paths for you. I promise you, Jesus created the path of success and the path of failure. And now, when you're going towards success, you're going towards Jesus. I promise you, if you go away from Jesus, you'll live the life of failure. I promise you, it's that simple. I promise you, although, that both paths in your life is divine. I promise you, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You may be going away from Jesus, and you may become a Pharisee. Although Jesus is still alive today, you'll understand that Jesus is in the air, and Jesus is in the silence, and Jesus is in the words you speak. I promise you, Jesus is in everything. I promise you, although, that you have one choice. You must pick Jesus. You must pick Jesus, because why not? I mean, why not? I mean, what's Jesus ever done to you? I mean, Jesus has never hurt you in your life. I mean, everything you ever heard from Jesus and by Jesus and about Jesus has been positive. And now, that in terms of what's been negative about Jesus is because of the people who've never followed Jesus. I mean, the Pharisees. I mean, they're Pharisees and hypocrites and people who do not believe in God. You have to understand me now. That if you do not believe in something greater than you, you will never be a greater version of yourself. You have to believe in something greater. I promise you now, you may criticize me and say that there is no God. I promise you, there is something better though. I promise you, if you don't believe in something better, you don't believe in God. I promise you now, if you don't believe in something better in life, you'll never live life. I promise you, that's all I'm saying. You just believe in something better. I promise you that whatever's better in life is God. I promise you, that's simple. I promise you, although now, since you have one choice, you have eternal life. You have to understand that we're going to live forever in Jesus' name. And Jesus showed up in front of people after his passing away. And he passed away and rose up 3 days later. And guess what? He showed up in front of people to say, I have the good news. You guys are all going to live forever. I promise you, that's inspiring. I promise you, Jesus walked on water. And his disciples seen them. And it's still going on today. I I promise you, why would 12 people lie about that? I mean, hello, I can see God in that. I promise you, Jesus said, don't cut your eye out. I mean, don't cut your eye out. I mean, the eye in I love you. I mean, without the eye, you cannot even do anything. You'll die without the eye. For sure, Jesus taught this back 2,000 years ago. And in ancient times, which is still today, although ancient times is still now, because the dinosaurs live today. You have to understand, Jesus still lives today. You have to understand that we live through wisdom and eternity. And now, how do we actually see eternity? And how do we actually see heaven and the afterworld? You can see in the words. You can see it in music. You can see the afterworld in music. I promise you, it's described really easily that there is an afterworld once you're listening to the music. I promise you, that afterworld is where heaven is. I promise you, it's in the words you're saying as well. I promise you, words make up life. And without words, there is no life. I promise you, what you speak is what you create. So you have to understand that in life, we have to be positive and you have to look at everything differently. I'm so excited today because I get to do my passion. And even if it's for free, because I've learned something along the way. I can see better. I understand I know nothing in life. I know nothing. Although I see better than before. I have more experience than before. I get to have Netflix in my phone. And Netflix, where I get to rent movies a month, in terms of per month, and I give $10. And I also save money. I save $10 a month because I never have to get the HD 2000 resolution for the video because I only watch the thumbnail prints and images of the video. And now, why is it so important? You understand it's so important to go and see as many images as you can of life. I promise you it's inspiring. I promise you that's why we travel, so that we can go and see new images of life. I promise you now, when I went to Cairns, I seen something new. I promise you, when I was in Townsville, in the Townsville Lookout in Australia, I promise you it's so beautiful. I promise you mountain here, I promise you island here, I promise you island here, and island here and mountain. I promise you it's beautiful. You have to go check it out. And it's called the Townsville Lookout in Townsville. You understand, when I went to Ayers Rock and I seen this massive rock, I mean, I'm driving 20 kilometers backwards to go forwards, and I see this massive rock while I'm driving in. I see it's amazing. I mean, 50 kilometers out, I can see the rock. I mean, 80 kilometers out, I can see the rock. I mean, that's how big it is. I promise you, although, that I was a bit confused about the rocks because there's 3 rocks over there. And it's massive ones. And I went to the Katajuta one. I went to the Ayers Rock. And then I went to the National Park of the Aboriginal State Rock, which is a private area. And that's why nobody goes there. Although you can see it from out afar. And it's amazing. And it's such a big rock. You'll be like, it's a meteorite. And it's so amazing. So it inspired me so greatly because it's been in my heart for 1 year to go. From the moment I traveled my life from Sydney to Melbourne, I realized I have to go to Alice Springs because I've never been there. And now it's been a 28-year journey to even get there. I finally got there by myself and I rented a car to go on my own. So that's another life skill that I'll teach you, is when you have a travel tour bus going, you don't ever go with that. You never go with the travel tour bus with other people for anything. You understand? Because the whole point of life is to travel alone. And when you're traveling alone, you'll find yourself in places where others only dream of. I promise you that I have been privileged to go and travel for 1 year and 2 months around Australia. And I travelled with the government allowance. I promise you now, I started with $600 a fortnight. And I worked my way up. You have to understand though, I'm still on that government allowance. Although I'm still doing better than the government allowance now. Because what I found out is that that money that they give me is printed. I promise you they're giving me scrap money. I promise you they're giving me scraps. I mean, they're printing the money in 1 second. I mean, they print $1,000 a second. I mean, they make people work 40 hours a week for that money. That's printed in 1 second. I mean, would you work for somebody who prints their money in 1 second so that you can work 40 hours for them to get that money? I probably would say that you would say no. Because most people are stupid in life and they may say yes to this. You have to understand. Although, never be the stupid one. You have to understand now, that is what's happening around the world now. And that's why most of the world, such as 99% of the world, is working a 9-to-5 job for this exact reason. And they're working for somebody who's printing money. And that's why I use the government's money, which is OPM, as Robert Kiyosaki says. And OPM stands for other people's money. I use other people's money to give toward the Optus prepaid internet, or to use it for travels, or to use it for clothing. I use other people's money. I never work for that money. I never work for money at all. I work for Jesus. I work for wisdom. I work to give you something for free. I work for my passion for free. And I never work for money. So I use other people's money to get around. And is that such a big deal? I promise you now, it's a big deal when you are using other people's money. Although other people make a big deal out of it and cause drama my way. And they say, you are so lucky and privileged. And now guess what? I'm so lucky and privileged. Although they create drama in a way to say, you are so negative because you have to borrow other people's money to travel around while they have to work for a 9-to-5 job for that money. And now that's the drama they create around I. Although guess what? I promise you that I never chose that for you. I never chose for you to work the 9-to-5. You chose that. I chose something else. I promise you now, just respect that. I mean, respect my life for the way it's been and for the way it is now. I chose the life I have. And there's no complaining about it. You cannot complain that I borrowed other people's money to go and travel. Because that money is printed. And you never work for printed money, as Robert Kiyosaki says. So I went to educate myself with finance. And I said that from this point on, I'm never ever on anybody else's income. Because I'm only on Jesus' income today. And that means that I work for Jesus. And I sold my soul to Jesus. I'd rather sell my soul to Jesus than to the devil. And by that I mean, if you sell your soul to the devil, you sold it for money instead. I promise you now, for example, the WWE, which is the World Wrestling Federation and Entertainment. I can say that it used to be the World Wrestling Federation, and today is the WWE, which is the World Wrestling Entertainment from the World Wrestling Federation, which is the WWF. Although it just changed one letter. I promise you now, those people are slaves. And they sold themselves to the devil. And that means they're working under a contract for 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years for money. And now, Vince McMahon or Vincent Kennedy McMahon may give them $20 million. Straight up and straight away. And now, that person has to fulfill the contract to get all the money. I mean, that person has to fulfill the contract first to get all the money. So what happens is, Vincent Kennedy McMahon says, this is what you'll get from 1 year to 20 years. Although, each year, I'll give you this much. I don't know how much that is. Although, guess what? I can say, maybe you are in that contract for 10 years. I will say for 20 years. And you may be getting 50 grand a year to work for Vincent Kennedy McMahon for 20 years, and you'll fulfill the 1 million within that year. Although you sold your soul to the devil and you're working for money now. And what Vincent Kennedy McMahon says is, I'll promote you. I'll promote you. I'll make sure that you're a star. I'll make sure that you have everything because you're boosting my business. I'll give you what you need. You give me what I need. Now, that is what business is. Business is all about, I'll give you what you need. You give me what I need. And it's just like that. And it's called collaboration. And it's called teamwork. Because that's what business is. And now, where I'm getting at is that if you go and work under a contract for money for a certain period of time, I mean, nothing's guaranteed. You may get injured in a wrestling ring. And, I mean, Vincent Kennedy McMahon will say in the contract, if you get injured and you cannot perform, your contract is irrelevant. I mean, that means if you're going 3 years into the wrestling ring, and then what happens is you suddenly crash or have an accident and you cannot wrestle, I mean, you've only made $150,000 and your career's gone downhill. Well, what you signed in terms of the contract with Vincent Kennedy McMahon to make $30 million, you understand that it's not going to be fulfilled because you're injured now. I mean, that's what happens in these contracts. And now, you have to understand that you have to take care of yourself along the way, although it's never about the money in the first place. And now, when you sign a contract to be with somebody to work for money, you're like a 9-to-5 employee. And now, where the WWE goes, you must go. And you must follow their ass. And you must follow everything they say. And you must be their puppet too, because now, if you don't show the boss some niceness, you are going to get fired. And now, that's not the whole point of life either. I promise you now, I have a nice, beautiful boss, which is Jesus. And now, with me and Jesus, I promise you there's no contract. I promise you there's got nothing to do with money. I promise you it's got nothing to do with money. And Jesus says, you guys are free to work for me. I promise you now, Jesus never asked me either. I promise you now, Vincent Kennedy McMahon would go and ask people, would you like to work for me? I promise you that's different. Because when somebody asks that, I promise you it's got to do with money. Because who would want to work for Vincent Kennedy McMahon for free? I promise you now that if you work for free though, you're not working for Vincent Kennedy McMahon anymore. You're working for Jesus. Because what Jesus does is free work. So no matter what you're doing in life, you have to understand that when you're working for free for somebody else, you're not working for them, period. Because you're working for yourself there. Although you're not bound to a contract with other people. I mean, when you work for free, you're a free agent. And that's what Jesus provides me. And now Jesus never screws me over. I promise you, I work with Jesus all the time, and Jesus gives me everlasting wisdom and says, I am the bread of life. You understand? Because Jesus is my teacher. And now, when I go with Jesus, I'm happier than ever. I promise you, if I go to work the 9-to-5 job, and I work for somebody else, I promise you it may give me $20 an hour. I promise you, and that's it. I promise you, they teach me nothing about business. I promise you, they teach me nothing about how to do the job. I promise you, they teach me nothing about how to be in the job. I promise you, they teach me nothing about how to stay in the job. And they teach me nothing about how to go up the level of the ladder. I promise you, they teach me nothing. I promise you, Jesus teaches me everything. I promise you, Jesus will teach me how to make $20 an hour, and how to make $50 an hour, and how to make $1 million an hour, and how to make $20 million an hour, and how to make $1 trillion an hour. I promise you, Jesus will teach me how to make all the money in the world. I realize the Bible is written. You have to understand the Bible comes from Jesus. And now those who understand that life is now will follow Jesus. And those people who understand that the spiritual life that you're supposed to be living right now is with Jesus Christ. And you're not supposed to sell your soul to the devil. You're not supposed to go elsewhere to work for money, because that's what most people are doing. And most people never follow Jesus because they're bound by money. And they believe they need money to survive. Although Jesus says, you just go the free way. And you go work for free. And you shall find me. I promise you, if you go work for free today, because what is happening now around the economics of the world, around you'll understand around you the economics are falling. And by economics, I mean the global economy around you right now is falling. And that means the economy is falling around you, which means they're printing more money to save your ass. And now, because they're printing more money to save your ass, I promise you they're giving you more money so that you go 9 to 5 work. I promise you that's what printing money is called. I promise you that's why they're printing money. I promise you they're printing money so that they can save their own asses. You have to understand. And now, because they're printing money, they're making you work for that money because it's printed. You have to understand. It's stupid. I promise you, it's stupid. I mean, they print money and they say you have to work for it. I promise you, that's what I mean. Although Jesus never printed money. I promise you, Jesus doesn't print money. And Jesus doesn't say you have to go work 9 to 5. I promise you, Jesus doesn't say that you have to go and be a slave to somebody else either. You have to follow what your heart says. So you have to understand that in life you follow Jesus because Jesus has everything good for you. And now if you're not trusting in me about what I say about Jesus, I mean, go and study Jesus then. I mean, go and study and go and find out. I promise you, that's all I ask of you. You don't have to believe me. You just go and study Jesus then, and you'll find out what I'm saying. I promise you, now just leave it open. And just leave Jesus as an open mind to go and study who Jesus is, just like the Buddha, and just like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. And go and study these people, and go and study John F. Kennedy, and go and study Hitler too. I mean, Hitler. I mean, the guy that killed so many people. I mean, go and study what he did. You go and make your own decisions in life. You have to study everything in life. You have to study people, as Tony Robbins says. You have to understand now that in life, you're supposed to move forward. And when you're moving forward, you're never going to be blasphemy. And blasphemy is another word for hypocrite. And hypocrite is another word for liar. I promise you, blasphemy has got all to do with lying. So a person who is lying is working for money. And a person who is truthful and honest is working for Jesus. I promise you, that's how you can really describe it. Although the people who are printing money today are making more people work for money, which is they're making more people lie and cheat and steal. I see, for example, with my life, I see Eddie Guerrero. Although Eddie Guerrero has a song that I lie, I cheat, I steal. I never lie, I never cheat, I never steal. Although I never put Eddie in this category. I never put him as the category of somebody who lies and cheats and steals. You have to understand, it's more that I have more respect for everything. You have to understand, although, that when Jesus says you must come and see God and go and see what God is, you have to go and see Jesus then. I promise you, because Jesus is the truth and the light and everything. And you can see Jesus. You can never know Jesus. Because to know something is to be egotistical about it. And now egotistical people are ones who think too much and they know it all. I mean, you have to understand, they know so much about life. And they are the book of life. I mean, they're the book of life. And now, because they're the book of life, I promise you they'll never learn anything more. I promise you, they're the book of life already. I mean, you know it all already. I've got nothing in life in terms of knowing. I know nothing. Now, you have to be careful when you say you know it all. You have to understand that you're really describing yourself that you know it all. Although I know nothing. And now I've actually caught myself out. Because I know nothing in life. And now Socrates says, you must know nothing. Because those who ask many questions are ones who know nothing. And now why are questions so important? Because what questions do is open the door. And now Jesus will open your door. Because Jesus would love to find out about you. Even more so. I promise you now, Jesus can see who you are already. Although, the conversation between you and God is, let's ask more questions about how can we work together. Because if you're not asking questions in between a conversation, You're going to be like, you have to go here. I'll go here. You must do this. I'll do this. You have to go this way. I have to go this way. You have to go this way because of this. You have to go this way. I'll go this way. I mean, there's no questions there. And now, do you understand how questions can come in that conversation? Roshi, now, the questions asking and the question asking in that conversation would look like this. How are you today? I love you so much. What did you do today? Roshi, now, that's different. Roshi, you can see it's already different. I mean, there's a miles apart difference when you ask questions in a conversation. Roshi, now, go forth and ask questions. Because when you're asking questions in life, you understand you make a proper conversation, and you also be open-minded to see what other individual is doing in daily life. And now that's what a question does. And it opens people into Jesus and into everything. And now those people who are open-minded are the ones who are asking questions. And those people who are closed-minded are the ones who are, you go this way, I go this way, you come with me. You come with me, I come this way. You go that way, I know nothing. I don't know nothing. You have to understand now, that's what statements are. And statements without questions is just a sentence. And it's a parable too. Although you understand that you can teach parables in statements, and you can teach parables in sentences, although you can teach parables in questions too. And now, rhetorical questions is a parable too, because you can go and say, you guys get me? Although I just asked a rhetorical question, so I never expect you to reply to me because, hello, I'm doing a video and you're not in front of me. That's called a rhetorical question. And now you have to understand that a rhetorical question is something that you ask and then you never even needed to reply. Now, that's a rhetorical question. A rhetorical question is when you ask a question, you don't expect them to reply. You just go and talk over the question. That's a rhetorical question. Although you understand that a statement without a question is just a sentence. And now when we're moving forward in life, you have to understand the difference is that a statement can also be a question. Although a question can never be a statement. You get me? Because that's just a statement. Also, I realize also it is a question. So when I say, I love you, Roshi, that's not a question. Although when I say, do you love me because I love you? Roshi, now I answered the statement inside the question. I said I love you within the question. Although you've now got a question and a statement together. Roshi, now that's the difference between a question and a statement. So you ask more questions. In that way, you'll be like Socrates. I know nothing. I know nothing about life. Because that way, I will keep learning. I mean, when you're a book of life, I know nothing. You have to understand. You never call yourself the book of life. You never call other people anything. I realize that when you're calling somebody something, you're calling yourself that. If you call yourself an idiot, you actually call other people idiots. I promise you, what you say towards others is what you call yourself. So if you say you're a fucking idiot, you just called yourself a fucking idiot. I'm not an idiot. I'm not a fucking idiot. Now, since I said that, now it's blasphemy. Although no, it's not blasphemy because I have the I am statement and it's truth. Anything that comes from I am is truth. So I am truth. I'm the light. I am Jesus. No, it's true that I am Jesus. Because when you're focused upon something greater, you'll focus on Jesus Christ and you'll focus on something that you can do. So every single day, you're teaching yourself more and more on how to life coach and how to be more serious about your work and how to understand more theory. You have to understand, you have to understand that theory has got everything to do with the doing of everything. I promise you now, Jesus never sat down to read a book because Jesus is God. And guess what? God will teach you everything because that's the book. I promise you now, when they built boats, I promise you they never read a book to read a boat. I promise you they just went to do it. I mean, everybody else who never built a boat, I promise you everybody else who never even built the boat had to go read the book before even doing it. I mean, the doing part is more than the reading. For now, you're reading me. You're reading how to do what I do right now. You're reading how to do what I do in life. And what I'm teaching you is how to do this video and how to perform and how to speak in video and how to really measure up in a video and how to really emulate I within the video while also making sure that you're pronouncing much better and being on top of your communication skills while you're also better than perfect and you're making sure that you're alive in life. I'm teaching you this right now. Now, I may be speaking about other aspects of life, although within the silence, I'm speaking louder. I'm speaking about what I do. And now what I do is also what I say. I say what I do. And now that's something that I build over time. So when I say I'm a vegan 10 years ago, and I'm still a vegan today, that's what I'm doing within the time. I promise you now, within that time, I maybe go speak about Djokovic and have all these topics about Djokovic, although I'm still vegan. I promise you now, I'm speaking louder than words because I still do veganism and you have to follow me in that. Because guess what? It's much better to be a vegan than it is a meat eater. Or it's much better to be a vegan than it is to be a meat eater. Understand? Now, I went backwards to just repeat that so that I can repeat it better. You understand? Because that's how you improve. You improve by repeating your words in a better way. You do everything in a better way. You change in a better way. You do something new. You do something you've never done. And now I use my finger, for example, to just go and say what I need to say. And I direct my finger to expose what I need to say in different functions, like this, just like a magic wand. I say alakazam. You get it? I use my finger to direct me like a symphony. I just have to do something great with my finger. And it's just point in the better direction. Rashid, that is the way, because that's how you're going to improve. You improve in a different way. So I then get my arm. I get my arm and I move my arm around as my communication goes. So does my arm. I communicate lightly. I communicate in a way that's going to help me. And now, when I go throughout life, I go with my communication skills. And now my communication skills is something that I speak. I speak it. And now, when the words come to me, it's already there. My word's already there. So once I say a word, I pick a word from my sentence and I elaborate on it. And now, when I go on it, you understand, I just elaborated on one of my words I said, and then I go into it and I say, I'm now better than what I said. Because now I'm changing my direction of communication to emphasize a better way. So now I use the word emphasize to go into a new sentence. I realize that, guys, when you emphasize something, you understand that leadership is quality. And now leadership is quality because when you're describing something of a symphony, you understand a melody and a melancholy. I realize now a melancholy is something to do with this moment. And now, when you realize that every single word in the dictionary is this moment, you understand what the meaning of life is. I promise you now, that's a metaphor. I promise you now, a metaphor is a teaching. And now, when you go into a teaching, you see how we're going to the teaching now? Because when I go to the teaching, you understand, I go and live my life. And now, I use the word live my life for the next sentence. I promise you, when I live my life, you understand from this point, I'm moving forward from my sentence because I've used a part of my sentence to make a new sentence. And now, when I make a new sentence, because I just used a part of my sentence again with making a sentence, you understand that making a sentence means now. You see, now, I just use the word now for my next words. You get it? So I'm teaching you communication skills in parables and teachings in moments. And now in moments, you understand that I just use the word in moments to continue. You see, I grab and latch on to every single sentence I do in a different way. And now in a different way, you see, I make sure to go and do something better. And now when I do something better, I make sure to go lift myself. And when I lift myself, I teach you. I promise you now, when I teach you, I make sure I lift myself. I promise you now, when I lift myself, I make sure that what I do every single day is I teach a parable. And now a parable, you see how I go into it? And now a parable is something that I can teach you. You see? Now, when I say you see, do you understand my question? You can see that. And now my question is, how are you today? Because how you feel today is a rhetorical question. You see that? Because I'm just teaching a rhetorical question now. Because the question is right now. I promise you now, when I teach you communication skills this way, you understand that this way is this moment. I promise you now, when you're relating everything in this moment, you can start a totally new sentence. And you don't have to start from your sentences. I understand when I seen this girl. I seen this horse today, and guess what happened? I'm starting a totally new sentence, and there's nothing related to the girl here. I promise you now, there's nothing related to the horse here. Although now I just went back to the horse to show you that the horse is beautiful. Although you understand that is a new parable. I promise you now, when I start new sentences, this is how it goes. I seen Popeye today, and I thought it was incredible because what he did was smoking spinach. And now when you smoke spinach, I promise you that Popeye is somebody who eats the spinach. And now, I understand Popeye is a tobacco smoker. I promise you, although, that I'm not a tobacco smoker, and I've got no need to do that. I promise you now, that's a different sentence, and that's got everything to do with teaching, although it's a new parable. And now a new parable is a new sentence. And now a new parable can be a sentence that is totally different from what you're saying in a sentence. You must see this baseball guy who just went this way, and what he did was incredible. He went to the woman and he helped her out. That's a totally new sentence. And now you're teaching what that guy did and how did he resolve it. And now what he did was go up to the woman, and how he resolved it is he helped her. Now that's different. And now you can start a totally new sentence whenever in your communication. And now communication is key to everything, because when you communicate, you love life. And now I communicate in both ways. I communicate with what works for I. And now you have to understand that you have to always communicate. And now in my communication, I use my I and you. And now I'll just use the I, for example. I understand that when life goes this way, I go in the moment. And now I'll teach you the I principle with the principle of connecting the words within your sentences to use a part of your sentence to connect it with the I again and again. So all I'm doing right now is I'll connect the I with a sentence of any word I choose in the sentence will be connected with. I realize any sentence or word I choose in a sentence will be connected with my I. So for example, I now will start with my I. I now realize that when I start with my I, I'm doing much better than yesterday. I understand that when you see me today, I'm starting a new verse, because the new verse will teach me what I need to understand. I understand when I see a verse, I can teach you everything in that. I understand that when I see something that I can do, I can love my way forward. I realize that when I go forward, I realize it's about me teaching you now. I realize that when I go with me, I go in I. I realize now when I go with I realize that it's really about you now. I realize I have to teach you something, so I have to relate it to you. I have to relate it to you, because if I relate it to I'm teaching more from my experience. You understand? Because when I speak from I realize I have to go back to I. And when I go back to I'm teaching you something of higher quality within I, and how I can manage to live life about I. And it's not about you, because it's about I. So when I go with I understand from my experience, I go this way. I talk from experience. So the I will talk about from experience, whereas the I will talk about it from the experience, because when I go back on my words, I do it much better than yesterday. And now this is actually my experience. And every time you talk the I, and you talk from the I, and with the I, you understand you only talk with the I promise you that way, you will improve your eye communication and your experience communication. And you'll tell people about your experience, because that's eye. Eye is experience. Now, that what I was doing with my eye there is different. I promise you, although that I used what I could with my eye to relate every single word with the sentencing of that sentence. So what I mean is, I realized that when you have 10 words, you say the I first, and then you repeat another 9 words. You understand? Because every 10 words you speak, your I must be the first word, and then you finish the sentence, and you can finish it with the I. And now your 11th word in that sentence can be I. So you start with the word I, and then you speak 9 words, and then you finish with the I. Now that's a beautiful communication sequence. Now, if you use the you, for example, you'd do the same thing. You'd go I, you would go you, and then you'll speak 9 words, and you'll finish with a you. So the word starts with I and you, and finishes with I and you. Now that's a communication skill that you have to learn. Although now, you have, for example, 2 rows of 10s. And now, with 2 rows of 10s, you will do this. You have let's start with I. I is the first word, and then 9 words after that is going to be just any other communication signal without the I. And then you finish with the I on the 11th word. And now you're going to connect the second parable, which is the second sentence, with the first sentence. And now what you're doing is, you're going to pick out from the 9 words that you spoke out in the first sentence that is not with the I, and you're going to transcribe it into the second sentence. I promise you now, that will look something like this. I understand when I go this way, I find what to do in I. I realize that when I find what to do with I live a better way in I. Do you get what I mean? I just went into 2 parables. You understand? Because what I chose from the first sentence is, when I find out what to do in I, I'll go a better way. And now, in the first sentence, I said that. And in the second sentence, I just got that. And I repeated it in the second sentence. And now, if you're doing it in 3 rows, you'll understand that it's going to sound like this. I understand that when I live my life, I'll find my I. I understand when I live my life, I'll find an I in I, so that I can go and grab something better for I. I understand that when I go grab something better for I, I'll go live my life better. Now, I changed it. Do you hear the sequence of life-changing moments right there? Because I changed it into 3 parables. I changed it. So when I do 5 parables, when I go 4 parables, let's not skip a step. I understand you never skip a step. I would say something like this. I love her because she teaches I how to love I. I realize that when she teaches I how to love I love my life more in I. I love my life more in I because she teaches me how to live my life in I. I realize that when I see how to live my life in I, I'll go and do something better for I. I just taught you 4 parables of how to transcribe from the middle sentencing and use 2-3 words to go and elaborate in another 11 words. And then from another 11 words, go and elaborate 3 words in another 11 words. And then in another 11 words. That's what communication is. And now, if you're doing the you in action, or with the you, and it's called the you in action. So you have to put yourself in action. You have to put your you in action. So when you put you in action, you also realize that you just speak with the you now. And now the you is the first word. And then what we're going to do is the next 9 words is going to be just random words. And then the you will finish with the 11th word. And now it's the same sequence as the I principle, which is just what I taught you just now with the I. Although we're going to change it with the U. I realize we're going to change it with the you now. I realize the I principle changes into the you principle. And now this is the you principle. You must understand that when I live my life, I do it for you. You must understand when I do it for you, you will live life much better in you. You must understand that in you right now is something great, so that you understand you. You must understand you so that you live life much better in you. Whereas now, do you understand me? I changed and I grabbed 2-3 words from just the ending of my sentences to start a new phrase. I'll repeat again so you understand me quickly. You can understand me quickly because I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you because there's something greater that I can say. Although, let's just start again because I stuffed up. I promise you, I didn't stuff up because I still learned, because I will teach you the next parable, which is the IUQ principle. And now we're going to change that up. Although, you just listen up right here so I can do this much better. You must understand that when I live my life, I do it for you. You must understand that when you live your life, you must also do it for me in you. You see, in me, for you, means you must go and live your life much better in you. You can see that when you go up into the heavens of life, you can do it for you. You see, now, the whole point of this is I went into 4 phrases of life. And now I connected the dots in the U principle of my sentencing. So each and every sentence is already connected with the U. I mean, from the first word to the 11th word is connected with U. And then I start my next sentence or parable with the U again. From the first word to the 11th word. And that's how you connect the sentences together. Now, that's a beautiful communication signal where you can learn how to communicate like that. And now, that's the only aspect of life that you have to do. And now, what's in the middle of those words from 1 to 11, and those middle words doesn't really matter. And you don't have to use those middle words. You can start a new phrase and connect your sentencing together with just the U. You understand? Although you can go and make up a different story without using the same words that you used previously. Although just make sure you're using the U from word 1 to word 11, every single sentence. You can do that, or you can use the U from 1 word to 11th word, and you can use a couple words in each sentence for each sentence. You can do it like this. You can make sure that when you're doing that, you go 1 word, you'll go 9 words that are different, and then you go the U. And then what you do is you use a couple words into the next sentence from the first sentence, although you don't have to do that. You can go the other way. You can go, word 1 can be U, and then you teach 9 words that you can just randomly pick out the most biggest words that you can put in those sentences, because that's how you learn the bigger words. And then what you do is, on the 11th word, you say U. And then now you finish that sentence. You don't have to say that sentence, or you don't have to pick out those words ever again in the next sentence. Or you can choose 1 or 2 ways. You can pick up the same words from that sentence and make a different sentence, or you can choose a different sentence altogether. And you don't even have to use those words other than U. You have to use the U. You have to start your sentences with U. You have to finish with the U. And now it's the same with the I principle. And now the I principle is just change from the U to the I. And now, for example, you would use the I as the first word, and the 9 words after that will be different, and then the I will finish on the 11th word. Although now you can use a few words from the first sentence and connect it in the second sentence with the I. Although you can also go and use your I in the first word, and then 9 words in the sentence can be different, and then the 11th word can be I. And then in the next sentence, you don't have to use these words that you used. You can choose a different path. Now, those are my beautiful I and U principles. Although now, you can start the sentence from the first word, which is I, or you can start with U. And then you can, for example, start with U and finish with I. You can also start with I and finish with U. And now it's the same referencing, although just different. Now, what's different is you can start with I and U. You can start with both in any sentence. So I can start with the word I, first word, and then do 9 words that are totally different, and then finish with U. And then I can start with U, and then do 9 words, and then finish with I. See how it's different? And now, within those sentences, I can use what is the first set of 9 words. I can use 2 words from that and put it into my second set of 9 words. Or I don't have to use the first set of sentences that I put together, and I can go totally different and never even pick out a word from that, because there's something better to say. And I may choose other words. You get me? And now you can use the I and you principle in any different manner. I mean, you can go I and you and I. You can go you and you can go you and I. You can go I and you can go you and you. And now you can finish the sentence with I, and you can start with you. You can go I and then you. You get me? I mean, when I go you can go I and you, I mean that you can start the sentence anyhow and finish anyhow. In any sequence. That's communication. Now, this is how it sounds. Now, if I start with my you and I principle, I'll do my first lot, which is my first example here. I'll say, you must understand that when I live my life, I live it for you so that I can live life in I. I promise you, that's the first sentence. And now, to go from that sentence, I will go, you must understand that when I live life for you, I'll live life in I. I realize that when I live life in I, I'll live for you. You get it? I promise you, I just changed the direction and I just went back to you. I went from you to I to you. You get that? I promise you, now those are the 4 corner posts. I promise you, now I can just continue that way. Or I can go 4 U's and I can go 4 I's. I promise you, now that's different. I promise you now that in communication you can do that. Although you can also change it up. And now let's do the third sequence too. You have to understand that, guys, when I live my life, I live it for something greater so that I can go into you. I promise you, now that's the first sequence. I promise you, when I go into you though, that I will go and live my life in a better way so that I can live my life in I. I promise you, now what happened is I changed from you to I to I. You see? I promise you, now when I go into I can live it for you. And when I go for you, you can live it in I. Now, that is how it goes. Although you understand that is a nice, beautiful sequence. So you can see that I went from you to I to you, or something like that. I don't know how it went. Although, guess what? That's the whole point. I didn't fail. I went from you to you. I went from I to you and to you to I. Now, that is the whole point. And you have to understand that life is like that. So when you are continuing your sentence, you can also do this. You don't have to finish with the you. You don't have to finish with the I. I mean, it's a different way now. Now, it would sound like this. You must understand, because I start with the you now. I start with the you in action, is what it's called. You must understand that when you're living life, you're in paradise in life. You must understand that when something happens, you're going to live your life in paradise for something better. You must understand that when something goes much clearly, you're going to have a much clearer mindset. You must understand that what happens, guys, is have more paradise. You get it? I promise you, I finish with the you. I promise you, I never finish with the you there. I start with the you, I finish with a different word other than you and I. I finish with a different word. And I use paradise for that word. And then I finish with another word that doesn't include the you and I. It just went you, and then you, and then you, and then you. I mean, 4 parables went 4 U's. Although, you can use 4 parables and have 8 U's. I mean, you would finish with the you and you, and then you and you, and then you and you. Although, I finish with the you and then paradise, and then you and then paradise, and then you and then paradise. You can do that. Or, you can go with the I and finish with the paradise, and an I and finish with paradise, and I and finish with paradise. Because paradise enables you to see the words that are all other words except for you and I. You get it? So, I realize what I will say is never start your sentences with paradise. I mean, never start your sentences with anything else other than you and I. I mean, you and I must be your first way to communicate. And every single sentence must start with you and I. I promise you, if you start paradise, I promise you it doesn't go. I promise you, if you say any other word that is not you and I, you're not teaching. Your ego, you're too much ego. I promise you, now, in order for you to lessen your ego, you start with the you and I in every sentence and put it in as many words as you can in between. I mean, put your words in the you and I, in between all those other words as much as you can. And that's what I do in my journal. I communicate this way as much as I can. And now my journal is much easier to write because I get all this time and measurements to never say anything under pressure. So I just write it out as much as I can. And that helps me to develop this communication skill to be able to speak like this. You have to understand that. And now, for example, the other way is the question. And now with the question, I promise you, when you're asking questions, you can start with anything. How are you today? You can start with anything. You can start with anything. I would love to say, how are you today? I would love to ask, how are you today? You must ask right now, how are you today? You must show me how are you today? You and I must go this way. So I would love to ask, do you know where we're going? I mean, that's how you can enable yourself to see that you can add the you and I and then ask the question. Or you can start with the how, why, where, what, when, who. Who is it? What is it? Why? When? Where? How? Who? Why? And what? What happened? Why did it happen? How did it happen? You can always ask questions. You can ask any form of questions. You can ask any formal question and start with any word in the question. So the question enables you to speak any words as long as it's a question. I promise you, although, that what we're removing from our lives here is making sure that our life never starts with anything other than an I, you, or question. So I call it the IUQ rule. I promise you now, my IUQ rule states that you must always use this in terms of I, you, and Q. And now the Q is a question. And now you must use these 3 syllables, and their syllables, and their vowels, and their everything in your life. And now it's your tool set. I mean, the I, U, Q. And now you can surrender and you can say, I'm free. Because the I, U, and Q will set you free more than anything else. So use this much more than anything else. I mean, use it in every single word that you can speak. And that's how you communicate, guys. Now, that is my IQ rule. So when I state it in my journal and I show you my IQ rule and I show you my schedule that I do the IQ rule 24/7, I mean, I start my sentences with I. I understand when I do that, you can hear how I talk now, because I talk in a different way all the time. And when I do that, I'm always doing something different. I'm always making sure that I grow from what I say. I'm always making sure that I live my life differently. I promise you, although, that this is a nice, beautiful video where you can go and share it to somebody else. Once you guys have me on YouTube now, you can subscribe, and you can also go and share it with your friends and family, because it's going to help them too. I'll see you guys in the next video.